The genetic heritage of the Hebrews is purportedly traced to Oriental, Negro, Near Asian, and Hamitic people. Adolf Hitler's quote in the book The Nazis, World War II by Time Life Books by Jewish author Robert Edwin Herzing. It is recorded by many historians that in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son, Roman Emperor Titus, put an end to the Israelite state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the time period from Roman Emperor Pompey to Roman Emperor Julius, it was estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Israelite slaves, from Babylon to Timbuktu, page 84. It is also a known fact that many of the descendants of Jews, Hebrew Israelites, fled into Arabia and Yemen. Evidence of the descendants of these Israelites in Africa, Arabia, was documented by travelers that frequented through Mecca/Medina, Saudi Arabia, during the 7th through 15th century, and by native Muslims, Moors, that possessed the land during that time. In the eyewitness account from Italian traveler Ludovico di Vertima, it shows how the Jews were considered black-skinned in appearance. At the end of 8 days, we found a mountain, Hijaz Mountains in Saudi Arabia, which appeared to be 10 or 12 miles in circumference, in which mountain there dwell 4,000 or 5,000 Jews who go naked. Does this sound like Africans or Caucasians? And are in height 5 or 6 spans, little under 5 feet, and have a feminine voice and are more black than any other color. They live entirely upon the flesh of sheep and eat nothing else. They are circumcised and confess that they are Jews, and if they can get a Moor, Muslim, in their hands, they skin him alive. At the foot of the said mountain we found a tank of water, which is water that falls in the rainy season. We loaded with the said water 16,000 camels, whereas the Jews were ill pleased. And they went about that mountain like wild goats, and on no account would they descend into the plain, because they are mortal enemies of the Moors, Muslims. Italian traveler Ludovico di Vertima, 1470 AD to 1517 AD. Fact 1. In ancient times and even today, the brown/black-skinned natives of many lands, including some areas in Africa, are shorter than today's average man. The term pygmy is defined as a man's average height below 5 feet. There are brown/black-skinned pygmies in Africa, Bushman pygmies, Australia, Thailand, Malaysia, the Andaman Islands, Jarawa tribe, Bay of Bengal, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, Negritos, aka Little Negroes, Papua New Guinea, Bolivia, Brazil, and areas in Southeast Asia. The Malay Australoid languages of these brown-skinned natives are interestingly related to the language of the large island of Madagascar, which is located on the east coast of South Africa. This shows that there was a linguistic connection to Africa as well as Southeast Asia and the Australian Aborigines. Perhaps the dark-skinned people of southern India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and the East Indies are also related to these short, brown, black-skinned natives in some way by their connection to Africa thousands of years ago. Fact 2. In Roman times, during the Common Era, CE/AD, Palestinian Israelites were classed among black Africans because it was almost impossible to tell them apart. These black Jews that lived in Arabia predate before 600 AD, when the Islamic Empire first arrived on the scene in the Middle East and Arabia to conquer the land of the black Arabs/black Jews. The Muslims would ultimately gain victory over the Israelites' land and over the black Hebrew Israelites living there in the Battle of Kibar. The Jews, Hebrew Israelites living in Arabia during this time were not European Ashkenazi Jews because the European Khazars had yet to convert to the religion of Judaism. The Muslims would kill, enslave, and scatter these African/Arabian black Jews, Hebrew Israelites, as evident in the Arab slave trade that took place during this time. The Quran talks about the success of the Muslims in seizing the Hebrews' land and the victory over the people of the book. This parallels the prophecy of the curses of Israel listed in Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68. The Arabs' historical accounts of the ancient Hebrew Israelites. In the Quran, which is the holy book for Muslims, it describes the victory they believed Allah gave them over the Hebrew Israelites, people of the book, which would allow them to subdue and ultimately enslave the Hebrew Israelites during their invasion into Arabia/Africa starting in the 7th century. Ironically, during the Arab slave trade, Arabs taking black slaves from the west and east coast of Africa would call their cargo the people of the book. The slaves taken from Africa by the Arabs on slave ships call themselves the Yehudi, which means children of Judah or children of Israel. It is well documented that from 600 AD till the 1900s and even today, Arabs have mostly taken slaves from Africa in what is called the Arab slave trade. The Quran, in this sense, would provide undeniable proof that these Hebrew Israelites or people of the book were brown, black-skinned people in those times and not white, European-looking people that we see predominantly today. The black Hebrew Israelites' disappearance is a mystery to many, but it has all been foretold in the Bible. History, in the meantime, since the Bible, has been rewritten, and the identity of the original people of many lands have been replaced by their invaders. It is a known fact that the Arab slave trade consisted of mainly black men and women taken from Africa, not Europe. This would mean that ancient Hebrew Israelites were black and not white. See for yourself. Quran Surah 2, Al-Baqarah, Ayah 122. Asad. O children of Israel, remember those blessings of mine with which I graced you, and how I favored you above all other people. Quran 059.014. Yusuf Ali. They, Hebrews, will not fight you, even together, except in fortified townships or from behind walls. Strong is their fighting spirit amongst themselves. Thou wouldst think they were united, but their hearts are divided. That is because they are devoid of wisdom. Quran 033.026 to 033.27. Yusuf Ali. And those of the people of the book, Hebrews, who aided them, Allah did take them down from their strongholds and cast terror in their hearts, so that some ye slew, and some ye made prisoners. And he made you heirs of their lands, their houses, and their goods, and of a land which ye had not frequented before. And Allah has power over all things. During the Arab slave trade, the Arabs enslaved black people from Africa and Arabia, scattering them all across the world, including the Middle East. This is why there is still a black presence in the Middle Eastern countries such as Palestine, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Qatar, Oman, and Jordan. Nobody knows this because the media in America doesn't televise it. Nowhere is it documented that the Arabs in 600 AD enslaved a race of white European Ashkenazi Jews during the Arab slave trade. In fact, it is reported that the Arabs were the first to enslave blacks from Africa, bringing them to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain/Portugal. It was because of the Arab slave trade that the Portuguese jumped on the bandwagon of slave labor and were one of the first European countries to start enslaving blacks from Africa. Everything the black Hebrew Israelite slaves went through was foretold in Deuteronomy 28 and the scriptures. It is well known by the world that the European Ashkenazi Jews have not been scattered all throughout the Middle East and the world by way of ships as bondmen and bondwomen. What this means is that the curses of Israel listed in Deuteronomy 28:15 through 68 and all the biblical prophecies of the fate of Israel apply to a different race of individuals than those in Israel right now. The Ashkenazi Jews are mainly found in America, Europe, and Israel. In Israel, the Ashkenazi Jews look nothing like the Caucasian Arabs or African peoples that surround them, despite the Bible clearly stating the children of Israel intermixing their seed with those of the black Ethiopians, black Egyptians, black Canaanites, black Philistines, and black Libyans. These were all nations of brown, black people. So where are the descendants of the real children of Israel at? It is a known fact that if you ask any European Ashkenazi Jew in America what tribe he or she is from, they will tell you one of three tribes: Judah, most common answer, Benjamin, or Levi. On occasion, if their last name is Cohen or Kohan, will they tell you that they are descendants of the priestly tribe of Aaron, brother of Moses. So where are the tribes of Naphtali, Ephraim, Manasseh, Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, Gad, Asher, Dan, and Zebulun? How come the European Jews know their heritage and the rest of the Jews don't? Something is obviously fishy because God doesn't do things halfway. So if the Hebrews were black and the sons of Ham, Africans, were black, then how could anybody distinguish them apart, especially if they intermarried with each other, as the Bible clearly says? Could it be that Africans sold into slavery all across the world via the Arab slave trade, Indian Ocean slave trade, and transatlantic slave trades were in fact Hebrew Israelites, as stated in the scriptures? One day I was reading the Bible and happened to later watch a documentary on all the slave trades that existed throughout the history of Africa, even some still going on till this day. I remembered watching the news during the Arab Spring 2010 uprising and seeing the fall of dictators from different North African countries. I noticed that the Egyptians, Libyans, Algerians, and the Tunisians were all light in complexion, despite living in the hot desert under the 100+ degree unforgivable UV rays of the sun. I also saw in the news how the people in Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran all looked similar to the people in the North African countries, some even looking more European Caucasian than Arab. I remember seeing pictures of the Jews in Israel at the Wailing Wall at Temple Mount and pictures of the Israeli soldiers. They all looked white like Europeans, but a little bit different than the Caucasian Arabs. I wondered why this was. I did my research on the Islamic Arabic Empire. I remembered that Ham had 4 sons: Mizraim, Egypt, Put, Libya, Cush, Ethiopia/Sub-Saharan Africa, and Canaan, Israel/Palestine/Lebanon/Jordan. I remembered that Ham was the father of all African races. The land of Canaan was what is now called Palestine, Lebanon, Israel, and parts of Jordan. Fact: Israel is connected to Egypt by way of the Sinai Peninsula. Even though the man-made Suez Canal separates the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, back in ancient times it was all one landmass. As a matter of fact, Egypt, the Sinai Peninsula, Palestine, and Israel all share the same tectonic plate. This means that Israel is a part of Northeast Africa. Europeans, Britain, came up with the term Middle East in the late 1800s, and its popularity continued into the 1900s. Before then, There was no Middle East. It's a known fact that the Middle East has no clear boundaries, and for this reason, it is a made up name. If it was real, having real boundaries, then we should see a Middle West, Middle North, and Middle South on the map. We do not see this. This was a clever way to separate the land where Jesus and the Israelites lived from Black Africa. If Israel, Canaan, was part of Africa, then people would have a hard time proving that the Israelites were not black. I remember seeing pictures of the Canaanite Levant people and the Philistines from ancient Egyptian artifacts, and to my surprise, they were black, just like the ancient Egyptians. The Phoenician, Philistine language and religion were based off of the Canaanite culture. Phoenician was the Greek name for Canaanite, hence the reason why the Canaanite natives call themselves the Kenani. The Canaanite pagan god Baal, or Baal-Hadad, was worshipped by the Israelites amongst other nations in the area. The Philistines' pagan god was Dagon, the half-man, half-fish god, father of Baal. The Philistines and Phoenicians were both known as sea peoples. The Canaanites, Phoenicians, and the Philistines established port cities along the Mediterranean coastline. In fact, the city Sidon near Tyre, Lebanon, is named after Canaan's first son, Sidon, father of the Zidonians. Anybody from Lebanon now will tell you they are descendants of the Phoenicians, sea peoples. But are they really more descendants of the invading Greeks, Romans, and the Ottoman Turks? Anybody that is from Palestine will tell you they are descendants of the Philistines, who are descendants of the ancient Egyptians, Mizraim, the son of Ham, in Genesis 10:14, Jeremiah 47:4. The only problem with this claim is that the ancient Canaanites and ancient Philistines were black. The Lebanese and Palestinian people today are not, therefore proving that the people living in these areas now are not descendants of the ancient people of the past. They are descendants of the invading nations that came to the Middle East and North Africa. For this reason, the Egyptians of today will openly admit that they are not descendants of the black Egyptians that built the pyramids, nor will they tell you that they know how to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. African clues that reveal who were the Hebrew Israelites. I remember how the ancient pictures of the Egyptians and the Nubians, Ethiopia, showed these people to be black, just like what I had thought. I also found proof that there were 3 times more pyramids in Nubia/Sudan/Kush than in Egypt, and that ancient historians stated that the Egyptians were a colony of the ancient Ethiopians who settled north of Kush. So I began to wonder what happened to the original people that lived in North Africa and the land of Canaan. I thought to myself that the only nation of people that spent a majority of its history in the land of Ham, Africa, were none other than the Hebrew Israelites. But who were we? African Americans, blacks, Negroes, descendants of? There are many blacks, or people that would be considered black by skin color alone, scattered all across the world, who speak the different languages of their European colonizers, and they do not call themselves Africans, Hamites, even though they share the same common physical characteristics, brown skin / tight curled kinky hair of Africans. So I decided to look up the meaning of Ham in the dictionary, and this is one of the things I found. According to Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary, listed under Ham, it defines as such: the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Why would the Zondervan's Bible Dictionary say that the Negroes are not from the descendants of Ham? Are we not descendants of Ham by way of Africa, and are all Africans or black people really descendants of Ham alone? What was Negro land or Negritia? doing in the ancient European maps of West Africa? Did the Europeans know that there was a difference between a Negro and other black nations in Africa? Could it be that there were some black nations in Africa that were descendants of Abraham, Lot, and the Hebrew Israelites of ancient times? Black people are surely not the descendants of Japhet, European/Turkish/Mongolian nations. This only leaves Shem as another possibility of our forefathers, especially if the ancient Hebrews were people of color in those days. I then wanted to challenge my hypothesis. I asked different Nigerians if they knew they were descendants of the ancient Egyptians, ancient Cushites, ancient Libyans, or ancient Canaanites. They all said no. Then I asked them if they were not descendants of any of the sons of Ham, then who were they descendants of? They had no answer. Then I asked them, who was the only other nation of people that the Bible talks about dwelling and living in the land of Ham, Africa? They said, the Hebrew Israelites. I asked different Africans what they referred to black people in North America, Central America, and South America as when speaking about us back in Africa. Some of them said that they referred to us as the people of the book or the children of Israel. I have heard this statement from other African Americans as well. The Africans today say that we are a lost people who lost our heritage and don't even know who we really are. They said that once we got to America, the Europeans called us African Americans or Negroes to make us forget who we were and what we really were called in Africa. All the Europeans wanted us to know is that we were from Africa and nothing else more. I told them a lot of slaves were taken from Central and West Africa. Then I asked them if Africans living in Central and West Africa were also the descendants of the Hebrews. On each occasion, they all sat and looked at me in silence, with amazement that they had never thought about that possibility. I told them that if Ham was black, then Noah or his wife had to have been a brown black person as well. I explained that if Noah's three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, were white, then where did people with brown black skin people come from? If Africans living in Central, West, and South Africa are not descendants of the ancient Ethiopians, Egyptians, Libyans, or Canaanites, then it would only leave one explanation. They are descendants of the ancient Hebrew children of Israel, who settled in Africa years after the Exodus, after the Assyrian captivity, after the Babylonian captivity, and after Solomon's temple was destroyed by other invading nations. Ask anybody from West or Central Africa these questions, and they will most likely tell you they are not descendants of the ancient Libyans, Egyptians, Ethiopians, or Canaanites. Could they have lost their history passed down from generations just like other descendants of black slaves scattered into the world? The Ethiopian royal family and the late Emperor Haile Selassie were supposed to have had the oldest records of their ancestry dating all the way back to King Solomon from the tribe of Judah. Some still speak the oldest form of the South Ethiopian Semitic language called Ge'ez, dating back to 4 AD, which has its roots to ancient Hebrew and Aramaic. The Ethiopian Jews of Beta Israel were still following the commandments of God written down in the first 5 books of the Bible, Torah, before being introduced to Babylonian Judaism, Talmud/Kabbalah, Christianity, and Islam. Ethiopians are one of the only African countries that didn't experience complete European colonization, even though some admit the Italians under Mussolini did accomplish this for a short time, and numerous invasions by other countries as the ancient Egyptians did. The Egyptian dynasties were also ruled at times by Nubians, Ethiopians, and Libyans before the Greeks, Persians, or Romans ever stepped foot on Egyptian soil. Before this period, all of the Egyptian pharaohs were black. The pictures on the walls of ancient Egyptian structures prove this to be true. The Hamitic people of Africa, the Hebrew Israelites, and their offspring, through intermixing at some point, were subjected to slavery and scattered to the four corners of the world, just as the scriptures say. The slave trade by the Portuguese, Spaniards, French, Dutch, British, Europeans, Jews, Arabs, and Indians is one of the main reasons why the Afro presence is seen all over the world. People living in the Iberian Peninsula, Spain/Portugal, back in the day even documented how dark the Jews/Hebrews were. Here are a few quotes from historians concerning the Jews in Spain and Portugal. Waits says, "An interesting gradation of all shades down to the black is exhibited by the Jews. Especially dark were the Jews of Spain and Portugal. The Portuguese Jews were very dark," says J.C. Pritchard. The Duchess de Brante, wife of Napoleon's ambassador to Portugal, said that the Jew, the Negro, and the Portuguese could be seen in a single person. Book, Nature Knows No Color Line. So dark were the Jews, especially of Portugal and southern Spain, that many whites thought all the Jews were black or dark. Many of the Jews who were banished from Portugal by John II settled in the West Indies. John Bigelow, who visited Jamaica in 1850, saw the descendants of these Jews and says they were Negroid. Nature Knows No Color Line, pages 123, 130. In 1510, black slaves were transported from Spain to foreign Spanish colonies in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, South America, with the permission of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, Catholic, of Spain. The Casa dos Escravos in Lisbon, Portugal, the government slave trade agency, sold more than 1,200 Negroes between 1511 AD and 1513 AD. The Emperor of Austria and King of Spain, Charles V, granted licenses to his trusted and favorite courtiers to transport African slaves to the New World. Fact: during medieval times, many Gentile Jews of other nations, by Judaism conversion, migrated to North Africa, Spain, and Portugal. They lived amongst the real black Hebrew Israelites and black Moors in southern Spain/Portugal. After the Spanish Inquisition, these Gentile Jews migrated back to North Africa, Israel, Europe, the Americas, and the Caribbean. Of course, they were not taken there on slave ships. They enjoyed a good life while the real black Hebrew Israelite Jews endured slavery on these Spanish-controlled islands. But this was predicted in the scriptures. So these Gentile Jews maintained their heritage, taking over the title as Jews, while the real black Hebrew Israelites would lose, forget, their heritage during slavery. Genesis 9:27. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents, territories of Shem. This proves that no matter where the original black Hebrew Israelites went, via slavery or migration in exile, the Japhetic Gentiles were soon to follow, i.e., invasion, slavery, colonization. The children of Japheth were prophesied to dwell in the black lands of Shem and Ham. This is why the Japhetic Europeans invaded Israel, Africa, India, the Caribbean, and the Americas. These countries were all areas the children of Shem, i.e., Elamites, Israelites, were scattered into. Jeremiah 17:4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. The changing, renaming of boundaries, the changing of languages, and the changing of religions caused the scattered black Hebrew Israelites to lose their identity, all while enduring the harsh conditions of slavery. Black Hebrew Israelite punishment in the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, during the 16th century, a Spanish man named Bishop Bartolome de las Casas of Chiapas, Mexico, was designated the protector of the native populations, protector of the Indians, in Mexico and the Caribbean. His job was to attend to the well-being of the Taino, Carib, Jarawak, and Amerindian natives in South America and the Caribbean. This included speaking on their behalf in courts and reporting back to the King of Spain. These protection policies for the indigenous peoples started in 1516, when several Hieronymite friars were sent to Spanish territories in the Caribbean to evaluate the consequences that colonization was having on the decline of the native population and the effects of forced conversion, religion, language. After a while, Bishop Bartholomew could not witness the atrocities being committed against the Caribbean native population, Taino, Carib, Jarawak, Arawak people. Believing what he saw, that the Catholic Church was destroying the natives in the Caribbean, in 1537 he returned to Spain with a request to King Charles V to end the inhumane treatment of the natives. He proposed to replace the native Caribbeans with more durable African Negroes. So, based solely on economical motives, King Charles V honored the bishop's request. He believed that it was not possible to make the new Spanish territories productive with only the help of a few unwilling natives. Therefore, he decided to use Negroes as slaves. In 1538, the licenses to transport 4,000 Negroes was drawn up, sending the black Negro Jews in Iberia, Spain/Portugal, to Hispaniola, Dominican Republic /Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, and Puerto Rico. So when American lawyer John Bigelow, 1817 to 1911, visited Jamaica and Haiti, he saw the descendants of these black Hebrew Israelites taken in the 15th century as Negro. As an American, John Bigelow was astonished because he had never before seen black Jews. In his travelogue, he wrote of the proportions of Jews who were of all colors in the Caribbean. This was because he had seen black Jews brought via captivity, as well as the Gentile European Jews who had left Spain/Portugal to oversee the black Hebrew slaves. He would write a book about his travels to Jamaica called Jamaica in 1850, or The Effects of 16 Years of Freedom on a Slave Colony. Moving forward, even if we say that Africans/African Americans are the descendants of Mizraim, Egypt, Cush, Ethiopia, Put, Libya, and Canaan, Middle East, then that would mean that there is a good chance that Africans/African Americans living today are the descendants of the children of Israel and the Hebrews. How can this be? Because the children of Israel intermixed with the Egyptians, Ethiopians, and Canaanites, as stated in the Bible, as you will soon see. Negro land, West Africa, home of the black Hebrew Israelites prior to the slave trades. In many medieval African maps, 500 AD to 1500 AD, there can be seen the words Negro land above Guinea in the area known as West Africa. Negro land, sometimes called Negritia, was an archaic European term to describe the inland and thinly explored region in West Africa where the Negro people lived. Negroland comprised the western part of the region called Ceuta or Sudan, not to be confused with the African country. In earlier times, the portion of West Africa all the way straight across east to Sudan and Abyssinia, modern Ethiopia, was known as Ceuta. So equals land of, and Judah equals Judah, thus the meaning land of Judah. Therefore, this whole strip of land from West Africa to East Africa was known as Ceuta or Ceuta, and its inhabitants were multiple black Jewish communities. This eventually was changed to Sudan, which later got changed to Sudan. During Arabic dominance in Africa, the territory of Sudan was divided into Western Sudan, Negroland / Proper Guinea, Central Sudan, and Eastern Sudan, Ethiopia/Abyssinia. The later term Sudan for the area was believed to be a direct translation of the Arabic term Bilad al-Sudan, meaning land of the blacks. During late medieval times, 14th century, West Africa, Negroland, was ruled by the Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire was the largest African Islamic empire in history. Rulership of this area went back and forth between the Songhai Empire and the Mali Empire. In the 1430s, the Songhai Empire regained its independence under the Soni dynasty. There are different reports that the Soni dynasty was a dynasty with Israelite king heritage, while others state the dynasty converted to Islam as other kingdoms, including Israelite, did with the spread of Islam. However, ancient Judeo-Arabic literature has revealed Jewish communities did in fact exist in West Africa, and these communities were referred to as the Jews of the Bilad al-Sudan. These Jewish communities were said to be descendants of exiled Jews in the Middle East, Israel/Assyria/Babylon, North Africa, Spain, and Portugal. Various historical documents prove their existence to be at one time in the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires. These Jewish communities would scatter further west to the coast of Africa, Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Cape Verde, and to the south, Proper Guinea, modern-day Ghana, Benin, Togo, Nigeria, Cameroon. These Jewish communities continued to exist for hundreds of years in West Africa, but were later dismantled or lost through changing social conditions, changing religions, migration, and the slave trades. The Bornu Islamic Empire, 1380 AD to 1893 AD, and the Sokoto Islamic Caliphate, 1804 AD to 1903 AD, became huge Islamic power players in West Africa during the beginning of the 19th century. The Bornu Empire ruled the land of northeast Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. The Sokoto Caliphate was the most powerful Islamic state during the 19th century. These two Islamic empires, while ruling over Negroland, encompassed what is modern-day Mali, Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, Benin, Chad, Ghana, and the Central African Republic, amongst others. When the British took over parts of this territory in 1903, they abolished the political leader of the Sokoto Caliphate and put the area under the Northern Nigeria Protectorate. Years prior, in 1900 AD, the British had established the colony and protectorate of southern Nigeria, where most Igbo Nigerians live today. Lagos, the most populated city in Nigeria, was declared a British colony on March 5, 1862. In the 1729 map titled Negroland and Guinea, anyone can see that these two regions comprised most of West Africa, where African slaves, aka Hebrew Israelites, were taken to be scattered into many nations to the west. The map shows the partition of lands in West Africa between England, Holland, Dutch, and Denmark. It's a known fact that between as early as 600 AD to 1800 AD, slaves were sold by the hands of native African tribes, Arab Muslims, and Europeans. The peoples sold into slavery during this time have been proven to be a different nation of people, although black in appearance, with mixed heritage of Semitic and Hamitic origin. These people are the descendants of the ancient Hebrew Israelites. Although the white slave masters didn't leave much evidence for African Americans to go by in America in regards to their heritage, Arab Muslim writers and maps written during slave period times reveal the true identity of the slaves brought to the Americas. These maps that can be referenced are the Map of Africa by Mr. Bolton in the year 1766, Negroland and Guinea by Emmanuel Bowen in the year 1747. Guinea and Negritia by Haman Ayres in 1737. Negroland and Guinea by Herman Mall in the year 1736. And the D'Anville map of Africa in the year 1747. On these maps, you can research a city called Lamlam or Lamlim in what is now modern-day Niger/Nigeria. In the 12th century, Muslim geographer, Egyptologist, and cartographer Muhammad al-Idrisi from Quetta, Spain/Morocco, wrote about a black Hebrew Israelite colony called Lamlam in West Africa, east of Timbuktu, Mali. Muhammad al-Idrisi was a descendant of the Idrisids, Moroccan Islamic State, who in turn were descendants of Hassan bin Ali, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the grandson of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Al-Idrisi writes in his book entitled Description of Central Africa, "In the whole land of Lamlim, Lamlim/Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, there are but two small cities, or as it were, villages, and those are Malel and Daou, situated at the distance of 4 days' journey from each other. Their inhabitants, as people of these parts relate, are Jews, most of them unbelieving and ignorant." Al-Idrisi of Andalusia, Spain. When any of the inhabitants of the kingdom of Lamlam comes to have the use of his reason, he is burnt in the face and temples. This they do to distinguish each other. All their countries and dominions are near a certain river, Niger River, flowing to the Nile. It is not known whether there is any inhabited place to the south of the kingdom of Lamlam. That kingdom joins on the west to Megzara, Mali, Niger, on the east to Vankara, Wanagara, Chad, on the north to Ghana, Empire, and on the south to the desert, and its people use a different language from those of Megzara and Ghana. Al-Idrisi of Andalusia, Spain. Also in the area now known as Sudan, Nubia, near the Nile River, but to the west of Abyssinia, there existed a Hebrew kingdom of exiled Falafjam Jews called Shankala. Al-Idrisi mentioned the Hebrew Israelites living in this area were attacked by native African Hamitic tribes and were sent to slave traders who then sent them to slave trading centers to be traded to all parts of the world. Al-Idrisi explains further how the black Hebrew Israelites were taken as captives to be sold into all nations. To the southward of Berisa, at the distance of 10 days' march, lies the land of Lamlam, into which invasions, are made by the inhabitants of Berisa, Mende, Saya, Takrur, Fulani, and Ghana, Old Ghana Empire. There they take numbers captives, whom they carry away to their own countries and dispose of to the merchants trading thither. These afterwards sell them into all parts of the world. Al-Idrisi of Andalusia, Spain, in his description of Central Africa. Here is more proof of Hebrew Israelites in West Africa. Whether the natives of the country have the Jewish distinction between Diaboloi and Daimonia in northern Guinea is not certainly known, but the inhabitants of southern Guinea undoubtedly have. J. Leighton Wilson, Western Africa, Its History, Condition, and Prospects, 1856, page 216. Mixed up with these pagan nations and customs, there are many obvious traces of Judaism, Karaite, both in northern and southern Guinea, and in the latter, some undoubted traces of a corrupted form of Christianity which have probably traveled across the continent from ancient Ethiopia, where Christianity was once firmly established. J. Leighton Wilson, Western Africa, Its History, Condition, and Prospects, 1856, page 220. 15th century writer Leo Africanus, 1494 AD to 1554 AD, was an Andalusian, Spain, Caucasian Moorish, Muslim, diplomat, and author of the book Description del Africa, or Description of Africa. In his travels, he traveled throughout Africa all the way to Timbuktu, Mali, when it was known as the Songhai Empire. In his book, he wrote about a powerful Hebrew Israelite kingdom in the 15th century, 1400s. He describes this Hebrew kingdom that was located to the right of the Nile River. Here is a quote from his book. Howbeit they say that upon Nilus, Nile River, do inhabit two great and populous nations, one of Jews towards the west, under the government of a mighty king. Leo Africanus, The Description of Africa, Volume 1, page 32. Leo Africanus also talked about the Hebrews living amongst the Songhai Empire during the 15th century in West Africa. Soni Ali was the first king of the Songhai Empire and the 15th ruler of the Soni dynasty. After the Hebrew Israelite turned Muslim Songhai king Soni Ali died in 1492 AD, his son Suni Baru was supposed to take the throne. Suni Baru refused to convert to Islam and declare himself a Muslim, so Muhammad Ture, one of Soni Ali's generals, challenged him for the throne. Muhammad Ture was successful and took over the Songhai Empire in 1493. He later became known as Askia Muhammad I, or Askia the Great. Leo Africanus describes Askia the Great's hatred for the black Hebrew Israelites living amongst his newly acquired Songhai Empire in what is known as Mali, Africa. The king, Askia the Great, is a declared enemy of the Jews. He will not allow any to live in the city, Gao/Timbuktu. If he hears it said that a Berber merchant frequents them or does business with them, he confiscates his goods. Leo Africanus, The Description of Africa. The rule of Islamic caliphates over the black Israelites, Jews, and the conversion of the black Israelites to Islam while in their migrated home in Africa was foretold in Deuteronomy 28:36. See for yourself. Deuteronomy 28:36. The Lord shall bring thee, and thy king which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, Allah, wood and stone, dome of the rock, Kaaba. So the question to ask ourselves here is, if by statistics 99% of the Jews worldwide are white Europeans, then where did all these black Jews in Africa come from? These are not Ethiopian Jews, whom these Arab historians are testifying to have met while in Africa. These Africans did not convert to Judaism by traveling to Israel and then coming back to Africa with a new religion. Did the disciples of Jesus minister to the Africans about the biblical Mosaic law, Karaite Judaism? The African Jews were following the law of Moses from the Torah and practicing Hebrew customs before Christianity or Islam entered into the continent of Africa. White European Jews cannot turn black in the sun, nor can they have black children. The original Jews had to be either black or white. This means somebody is obviously lying about who the real children of Israel are. History doesn't lie.